Good morning, insiders. Welcome to another edition of your Monday download. Got some good stuff to cover today, and we'll jump right in. I do need to just say this, not because I'm insecure about it, but because I'm sure most of you are noticing that my hair is kind of getting long. I had some inappropriate comments from my teammates earlier in the week, and so I do have a haircut scheduled. It just, the long story is that they lost my phone number when I called to get the appointment, and then they were full, and now I have to wait until tomorrow, which is Tuesday, but it's getting kind of shaggy. So I know that there'll be comments on it, so I thought I would just address it and get it out of the way so it's not the elephant in the room. All right, let's jump into the download today. Let's talk again about electronic signatures. We've talked about it in the past that banks frown on those, and on the items that go to the lender, specifically your purchase contract and your listing agreement, those items the banks see and they look at, and we literally, the last couple of weeks, we got a decline on a short sale because of an electronic signature. They said the signatures don't match. What they mean by that is that the banks match the signature on the purchase contract with the signature on the mortgage documents. They're wanting to make sure that those signatures match and that it's the same person. It seems like a bit overkill since someone can't sell their house without notarization, documentation, and all that kind of stuff, but this is what they want. We also had Wells Fargo penned a short sale file, like they wouldn't give it to the negotiator to review and submit to the investor until we had a wet signature on a listing agreement. So I would have thought that a purchase contract was sufficient, but they wanted on the listing agreement as well. So if you can just, I know that it's inconvenient, it's a lot more convenient, especially if you have buyers or sellers rather, that are in all over the place, long ways away. It's a lot easier to do an electronic signature. I love DocuSign, I love electronic signatures, but I will say that the banks are not just frowning on it now, they're actually shutting stuff down or slowing things down because of it. So we're going to start asking for those because we know the bank's going to ask for them. So if you could just be proactive in getting those, at least on those documents that the bank sees. As far as our documentation, we don't care. I mean, we're fine with electronic signatures, but the stuff the bank sees, they need to have it. So, all right, let's talk about strategic defaults. And on our call earlier in the week, we talked about this. And this is just, I'm going to be just really quick on this. This is a printout that I did off of an article. It's called Fannie Set to Penalize Defaulters. And it starts off by stating that Fannie Mae said Wednesday it would lock out borrowers from getting a new loan for 7 years if they default on a mortgage they could afford to pay. And the idea and the premise behind this, we've talked about strategic defaults, and the strategic defaults that we've talked about in these downloads has to do with short sale, where someone is attempting a short sale strategically. They don't want to go through foreclosure. They're not strategically letting the house go to foreclosure, but they're trying to do a short sale strategically. And that's something totally different than this, or different. I mean, it's not completely, we're in the same idea. There's strategy involved on the seller side. What this is saying is for people that are walking away from their home and saying, forget it, I'm just going to let this thing go to foreclosure. It's a rental property. It's upside down. It was an investment to begin with. I'm going to cut my losses and walk away. For those individuals, Fannie Mae is saying that they are now going to keep people from getting mortgage loans unless they can prove extenuating circumstances for 7 years with a foreclosure, which means that everybody's going to be lumped into, you have to wait 7 years to get a loan if you had a foreclosure unless you can prove otherwise. And so the challenge will be coming up with proof that there was some sort of extenuating circumstance that caused the foreclosure to happen. What does this mean? Well, make sure when you're talking to your sellers, you're bringing this up. If they're thinking, you know what, I just don't want to go through the hassle of a short sale, this is something that you need to bring up. It's a sales point, if you will. Benefit to them as a seller, if they pursue a short sale, Fannie's saying, hey, we're going to let you do it in 2 years. We're going to let you even a strategic short sale, and that's an interesting thing to remember. If they're trying to get out of this strategically, and they go through a strategic default in a short sale scenario, they're only going to have to wait 2 years. If they do it strategically as a foreclosure, it's going to be 7. So they really have to pay attention to what they're going to do here. I will reiterate, and this is going to be a segue into something else we'll talk about later, is if it's a strategic short sale, the seller needs to understand that there's going to be a high probability of a promissory note, some sort of cash at closing, something from the seller if they've got the means to pay the loan, but they just don't want the asset anymore because it's not an asset. The bank's going to want something to help them be closer to whole. So they will do the short sale, but just make sure you position your seller that the probability is they're going to have to pay something at the end of the day. All right, let's talk about. We'll talk more about prom notes in a minute. Let's talk about HAFA. And we've talked a ton about HAFA, and I'm not going to go into the specifics about the program. I've got several videos out there about specifics on HAFA program. I'm not going to talk about whether or not I think HAFA is a good idea. I've got videos out there on that as well. What I want to talk about is that HAFA qualifications are difficult, and we've started to dabble in this and start putting a couple of these into, or attempt to put these into HAFA, that we're finding that it's very difficult for someone to qualify in HAFA. Now, this isn't really a surprise to anybody because it's very difficult for anyone to qualify for Home Affordable Modification Program. It's one and the same program, and the fact that most people aren't qualifying for HAMP to begin with, it tells us that people are not going to qualify for HAFA as well. And here's one thing that you've got to remember. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac do not participate in HAFA. They actually administrate it. They're like on, making sure that the banks are following the rules when it comes to it. But if it's a Fannie Mae or a Freddie Mac loan, they're not participating in HAFA. It's just GSE loans that are doing this. So if it's a Fannie or Freddie investor on the loan, it's dead right away. There's no way it's going to go through HAFA because they don't even participate. So what I want to put out there is to be very careful in how you're positioning your sellers. It's good to have the marketing and to get sellers in the door with the $3,000 moving money that they get through HAFA. Make sure you're positioning them, saying, hey, you know what? This is kind of icing on the cake. What the short sale is going to do is it's going to help you avoid foreclosure. It's going to help you get out of a bad situation with the house. There might be some money at the end, but realize that it's very difficult for people to qualify for those funds through HAFA, but we'll do our best. So that would be a better way of positioning it than telling everybody, hey, you can get $3,000 for selling a short sale right now. It's, everybody's doing it. It's the law, which a lot of agents like to throw that around, that it's the law. But be very careful of that, because the reality is that probably 80% of the people that want HAFA aren't going to qualify, which means that if that's the case and you're positioning all your sellers that way, 80% of your sellers aren't going to get what you told them they would, which is going to create some problems at closing, and we don't want that. You don't want that. So the other thing, let's talk about those notes. This is something that we're seeing very consistently. The money-hungry banks, investors, and private mortgage insurance companies are going after prom notes like crazy. They're attempting them on almost every short sale. So why? I don't know. I mean, they want their money back. I mean, anybody telling you why they want them is just conjecture at this point. It could be that some of the banks are realizing that if they're going to have to go HAFA someday, and most loans, when Fannie and Freddie jump on board, if they can't get prom notes with the HAFA program, they better get as many as they can now. I don't know. It's hard to know exactly why, but the reality is you need to know that it's happening. It's adding time to the negotiations to get some of those off. If your state foreclosure law allows deficiency rights and collections after a foreclosure auction, it's going to be very challenging to get those off. And so knowing your state law is important. Then we can take those pieces of information, we can negotiate with that. But just be aware, when we're getting prom notes back, it's not because the bank is isolating your seller out individually. Almost everybody, especially your Bank of America stuff, that almost everybody is getting countered with prom notes or cash contributions. The banks are taking massive losses, and they're trying to cut those losses any way they can. So that's all I've got today. I know this is a lot of information packed into a short amount of time. We have another conference call next month, first Wednesday of the month. Sorry again that I didn't get you that reminder out until the day of last week. But set that on your calendar, 1:30 Pacific time, the first Wednesday of every month. We'll be on the call. So have a great week. I hope success to all of you, and let me know if you have any questions or need to strategize on anything. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.